Craig Houston has been arrested and charged. Now, I've met Craig Houston a couple of times. I don't know him very well at all. But Scottish YouTuber, commentates on politics from a sort of right-wing perspective in general, I would say. Details are quite sketchy at the moment, but it is clear that he's been arrested and charged with an online communications offence. So here's a media headline. Podcaster charged after Glasgow Southside councillor targeted with vile racist abuse. Now, people reading that, you would assume that it means the podcaster has come out with this vile racist abuse, but that is not the case at all. I mean, is that headline deliberately misleading? Very possibly, I would suggest. So let's have a look at what we know about what's really happened. So the Glasgow councillor is Dr. Soraya, apologies if I've mispronounced that, Sadiq, who's a Labour councillor in Glasgow, and here she is making a comment.
What surprised me about being a female representative is how pale, male and stale it is. The lack of female, the lack of diversity in the decision-making process.
Well, just a few additional caveats before I begin this video. You know, the term punching right, don't punch right, fuck off. First and foremost, I'm under no illusion whatsoever that the video that I'm about to make here with my minuscule little channel, as irrelevant as it is going to make any dent whatsoever in the momentum or lack thereof and or popularity, etc., reputation of your man in question here. That's not really what I'm doing here. I just took a bit of issue with some of the things that the guy has said in recent weeks, months even. I know I'm a bit late to the party as far as the sort of Craig Houston stuff is concerned. And the second caveat is that I am not simping for Craig Houston here. There's a bit of a point to the video that I'm making here, which I will come on to in due course. Thirdly, credit where credit is due to some of the stuff that your man here has done over the years as far as covering like the LGB emphasis and the T education in a Scottish educational context is concerned. I have to leave my bias to one side for obvious reasons because he's not the only one here, but quite a lot of prominent Scottish political commentators have really done fuck all when it comes to critical race theory, for example. Richard Lucas, back in the day, to his credit, to a certain extent, did start to cover some of the stuff that I was talking about back in the day, the Building Racial Literacy Programme, but that died in the vine. Of course it did, and if it's hot takes I wasn't exactly happy about. You know, call a spade, it's racist, it's anti-white bile, it's anti-white shit. These people do not like white people, but no, it's all about profit and social justice, you know, ideology. If we could just integrate everybody and make everybody think differently, things would be different. Fuck off. That stuff annoys me, right? Last caveat before we go any further, I will also say you are entitled to support whoever the hell you want to support. And as I said earlier on, I do not think that my video in any shape or form is going to convince somebody to stop supporting any specific individual in question. I'm just simply saying that this limp-wristed, this is my opinion here, I find some of the crap that people like this guy say at times to be limp-wristed, soy, civic nationalistic at best, and at worst, just fucking naive and disingenuous. Anyway, so, that out of the way. So, you know, credit where credit is due if you want to go down that route as far as Richard is concerned in the video that I played a segment off, and I will play a bit more of the video in just a second. You know, he does, in his own terminology, semantics, whatever you will, you know, he says that what this woman said was wrong, blah, 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 right? Of course, it's wrong. It's fucking racist. If we're going to go down there, if these people have set the parameters for what is and what is not racist, right? By their own logic, their own definition, this shit is racist. You're right. You do not get away with saying anything even remotely similar if the roles are reversed, whether that is to do with nationality, whether that is to do with race, whether that is to do with sex, etc. But it's fine for people, irrespective of their ethnic background, to shit on white men 24/7. And quite frankly, why people do not seem to take more of an issue with this, I think it's part of the problem is we become so fucking normalized to it now. At this point, it's like water off a duck's back. But that's unfortunate. It's the times that we live in, but this is the reality. You know, this woman, like many other women that have come before her and many other men that have come before her, white and or black, by the way, because there's plenty of our own soy boy politicians and councillors, etc., and activists, alike education teachers, etc., who all say the same shit. Pale, male, and stale. White man bad, etc. Right? Shitting on white men 24/7. Right? So it's vile. I don't know what the fuck Craig Houston said in the video in question, which ended up with him being arrested at the time. Right? And I'm not in a position to see. I can probably hazard a guess he didn't say very fucking much, though. You know? But regardless, just a wee tiny example here, because obviously the sort of so what I'm looking for, the drama that occurred post his video relating to this woman here after she said what she said. You know, there was accusations of like racist, vile abuse, etc. So he ended up being arrested. But bear in mind, I've used the term before, hyperbole, okay? Bear in mind, years ago now, at this point, fuck me, the golden days, anti-racist education is emboldened after white supremacist attacks, right? Remember this? Remember this? Recent abhorrent, right? This is the terminology that they use all the time. It's hyperbole on steroids. Recent abhorrent online racist attacks have only increased determination to build racial literacy in Scottish schools, says the Education Scottish boss, or Education Scotland's boss, Gail Gorman, right? And obviously, you need to pay for this shit. It's behind a paywall. But it says here, recent white supremacist attacks on Scottish schools and educators have only served to strengthen the resolve that anti-racist education is vital and is key to making the experiences of all pupils positive, according to the Chief Executive of Education Scotland. Now, what is that in reference to? That is in reference to people calling out the shit back in the day, calling out the building racial literacy educators who were taking to Twitter, etc., at some fucking conference, some education conference. I can't remember the terms now, or the name of the event in question. But the reality is here, on Twitter, right, people were calling them out, calling into question the proportionate representation bullshit, calling into question the racism that was clearly on display when it came to them talking to no end about the need to diversify the teaching workforce, etc. What was the response? Retreat. What was the response? Hyperbole. What was the response? Defensive. What was the response? Accusations of racist abuse. Because it is racist in nature, according to these people, by their worldview and whatnot, it is racist to simply oppose their shit, right? But the point here is, oh, the abuse, everybody's getting abuse, right? So what I struggle to believe, right, is that in this particular instance, in the incident in question with Craig Houston and this Labour councillor, is that the racist abuse. You know, it's almost as if it's just rinse and repeat. Really, rinse and repeat. Because time after time after time, whenever somebody ever calls into question what these people say, they're immediately met with isms and phobia accusations, etc. Right? So, you know, there is that.
Who knows? It might well have done. So, Dr. Siddiq said that. It's a foolish thing to say, and it's controversial, and it's inviting opposition. People are going to disagree with you. People are going to push back and say you shouldn't say that, just like I've been saying in this video. Now, the story goes on that she was then subject to online abuse. Racist, anti-Islam abuse. I can quite believe that, and I entirely sympathize with you. And if any of these people committed crimes in that, I hope that they're prosecuted if there were real crimes, like being threatening, for example. So, right, you've got my sympathy there. I've got no time for the people who've been abusive online. Obviously, people are abusive to the Scottish Family Party online quite routinely, but the police never do anything about that. But that's two-tier policing for you. Now, notice here, Craig Houston's been arrested, but the people who are actually coming out with this racist abuse, allegedly, have not been arrested.
It's a bit odd. It's a bit odd, isn't it? By the way, like that he said there, I don't disagree with, by the way. I'm coming to what I disagree with. And historically, he said other things that I might play in a second as well after, that I also disagree with. But it's a bit odd, isn't it? Because this is the way it always seems to go. Hence the fucking article I just showed. Racist abuse. White supremacy, white this, white that, Nazis, goose steppers, etc. Right? You know, this is what these people always do. So it's a bit odd. No, it's not really. Yeah, it's status quo. Anyway, here we go. Hey.
YouTube channel, because I sometimes make videos about race, and it's a very sensitive area. So, as an example, a few months ago, lots of people were saying Humza Yousaf's not Scottish. So I made a video saying, is Humza Yousaf Scottish? And in the video, I basically said, yes, he is. It's really unfair to say Humza Yousaf's not Scottish, but there are valid questions to ask about his priorities and his loyalties. So that was my video. Very reasonable, very temperate, and came to a justified conclusion. But then you look at the comments underneath, and quite a few of them, quite a significant proportion, are a bit unsavory. I would say they're a bit embarrassing for the family party. We don't really want to be associated with views like that. Just people.
I fucking muted my mic there. There it is, though. So they're embarrassed by comments that oppose his belief that Humza Yousaf is Scottish. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Lucas. Right? Not that you'll ever watch this video, but let me ask you a question, Habibi. Right? You say that Humza Yousaf is Scottish, and I'm going to play a wee tiny bit of his video in just a second, but you say that Humza Yousaf is Scottish, right? And you say that people, or you imply that people who disagree with that notion must be racist. Must be racist, you know? Intolerable, embarrassing, anti-immigrant, blah, blah, blah.
Simply did not belong here. Because I see myself, of course, as Scottish, but also Pakistani too. And I can't wait to come to visit as First Minister, to see my fatherland, my motherland, and inshallah we just work together to increase that cooperation. I was 6 years old when I was first told to go home. And I'm afraid since then it's been a regular occurrence. In fact, almost daily if you look at my social media feeds. And I won't lie, Presiding Officer, it is that racial slur that probably hurts me the most. Very simply because I have no other home than this one. I never will, I never have. My heart will forever belong to Scotland. And of course, I'm very proud of being the first Scottish Pakistani. It's very important. You know, I've never shied away from the fact that I'm both Scottish and Pakistani.
Why is it that people like Humza Yousaf, Rosa Saleh, Kajida Mohammed, David Lammy, I could go on, you know, even people like that fucking boxer, I can't remember his name now, the big guy, Anthony Joshua with his fucking Nigerian or whatever it is tattoo in his arm, you know. Why is it that these people can say that they come from somewhere else while simultaneously get to cling on to our identity? So it's unacceptable, it's embarrassing, it's racist for people to say that Humza Yousaf is no Scottish, right? He's a British citizen. There's no such thing as a Scottish citizenship for now, right? He's a British citizen, nobody's denying that. He was born and raised in Scotland, nobody's denying that. But he himself is able to say that he's Pakistani. He is allowed to say that. But if you say that, you're racist. Why is that? Why is that? And why is it that people like Richard Lucas, and he's not the only one, fuck me, he's pretty prolific on the topic when it comes to it. Why is it that people get to then in turn throw the term racist, etc., at people who just simply reiterate what these people themselves say? Humza Yousaf concedes when it suits him that he's Pakistani and Scottish. You know, my Pakistani heritage. I'm the first Pakistani Scottish First Minister. My heart belongs to Pakistan. Whatever the fuck they say. The point is, though, right? They get to say it, but if you say it, oh, well, you're not Scottish, ain't you? You could literally quote them word for word, and you still get called racist. Why is that? The problem with this notion of don't punch right is unfortunately the right, so to speak, right? I know that the lefties think that everybody that ain't one of them is walking about masturbating behind closed doors to photos of Adolf Hitler and fucking Himmler, but the reality of the matter is the right, so to speak, has got a major problem with soybaggery when it comes to like civic nationalist BS, which to some you can kind of forgive because they've never had to see things a different way and whatnot. But when it comes to people that are in positions to potentially influence others, such as your man Richard Berry, like the guy himself says he's Pakistani. So why is it fucking racist and or xenophobic and or vile and or embarrassing for people to just literally quote him? You know? Oh man, you know, it's racist. We don't stand for that here at the Scottish Family Party. And that's why you ain't gonna get any votes, Gajee.
Humza Yousaf were to do one of these DNA tests where you take a hair, send it away in an envelope, then get some readout a little while later, saying where your ancestors hail from around the world. It wouldn't come back saying Scottish. But I think that is actually irrelevant.
So If Hamza Yusuf was to do one of those ancestry tests, of course he wouldn't come back saying he's Scottish. But I think that's irrelevant. What the fuck? Like, the cognitive dissonance is off the charts, man. Off the fucking charts.
In Scotland are different races, and in many cases their race is just entirely irrelevant. It's not an indicator of any sort of difference whatsoever, apart from, skin color. Now,
there's another tactic that he may not necessarily be doing on purpose, but it's a tactic all the same, right? He makes this about race, right? White, race, right? Polish people ain't Scottish. Norwegian people ain't Scottish. Hungarian people are not fucking Scottish. Dare I say, most English people ain't even got any Scottish ancestry, right? So this concept constantly comes up time and time again. Oh, white, right? He's just after saying, he mentions an ancestry fucking hypothetical, right? Or analogy, there you go, right? He's just after bringing it up. I'll tell you what, a fucking Ancestry.com or 23andMe ain't going to tell you. You're right, bro. It's going to tell you your DNA components, your ethnic makeup, right? Ethnicity and race are two different things, but this is a tactic that they always use. They conflate, they blur the lines and whatnot. And as I say, don't know if the guy's doing it on purpose, but he's doing it all the same. Okay? It's gone from being about Scottish. What makes you Scottish? Your ancestry. Oh, it might not tell him that he's not Scottish. Why would Hamza Yusuf's ancestry report, if he was to do one, right? Why would it come back and tell him that he's not Scottish? What, because he's brown? No. Because he's not brown. There's plenty of people that have taken these DNA tests, right? 23andMe, etc. 95% Celtic or Scottish, etc. It doesn't matter, 50%, 70%, right? The point is they've got roots, they've got blood, they've got DNA, right? Lineage, etc. Somebody who was born elsewhere, or even if they were born here, but two people who descend from elsewhere, they ain't Scottish on the basis of what a nation used to mean back in the day. Oh, we can't talk about us racist, it's embarrassing. It's nothing to do with skin colour. Oh, God, man.
I've seen a couple of times Hamza Yusuf wears a sort of semi-Pakistani outfit when he was sworn as an MSP and as the First Minister. So if we're looking at the question, is he Scottish? Well, it's as though he's trying to answer that question by saying not entirely. I'm a bit mixed, actually. I'm Pakistani Scottish. Now, I've got a bit of a problem for that with someone putting forward themselves to be First Minister of Scotland. Now, if Hamza Yusuf wants to wear his ethnic outfit at the SNP ball or to get married in or whatever, then absolutely fine. But when you've been sworn in as the First Minister of the nation of Scotland, I'm not so sure. So in terms of identity, is Hamza Yusuf Scottish? I would say yes, but he deliberately blurs the picture.
You know what I mean? Oh, fucking hell. He wants to wear his ethnic garbs, his ethnic clothing, etc. He can do that on his own time. When he's First Minister, he shouldn't be doing that. I have a bit of a problem with that, do I? But the point here is, right, I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the far right, like the big bad far right, like, right? There is obviously some people out there who just hate people who ain't like them, right? I get that, right? But it's a lot more simple than that. Why is it that he himself, Hamza here, and he's not the only one, as I've said, why is it that these people can harken back to their ethnic background, acknowledge, be proud, and establish and talk to no end when it suits them about their ethnic background? Point in case here being that they come from somewhere else, and they're proud of that, and I have got no problem with that. The problem that I have, that seems to go over you and many other people's heads, unfortunately, is the reality that they simultaneously do what I just mentioned while also clinging onto our backgrounds, right? All of a sudden, the concept of being Scottish is nothing more than a label. It's simply a badge that you can slap on upon touching your tippy toes on our magic fucking soil. I'm Polish and Scottish. I'm Hungarian and Scottish. I'm Norwegian and Scottish. I'm Somali and Scottish. I'm Pakistani Scottish. I'm Afghani Scottish, right? So they all come from somewhere while simultaneously latching on to the term Scottish. Where do we come from? Do we get to do that? No, we don't. We just happen to be cogs in a wheel. For lack of better terminology. This stuff pisses me the fuck off. He's not the only one. There's a lot of other videos I could make about a lot of other people, but I'm not gonna. There's just one other thing that I wanted to sort of bring up here, because like this stuff about race and whatnot, like all that stuff annoys me, right? But this guy has kind of gone on a bit of a fucking tirade as of late in relation to fucking Craig Houston. And again, to bring up what I said at the start, I'm no fucking like a simp for Craig Houston. There's like some things that I agree with him on, but quite frankly, he's a unionist and whatnot, and I can't be fucked by any of that. No offense, guy. If you ever listen, like you will. But point is though, like the side of the bullshit that your man's been coming out of as of late is leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, let's have a look at this story. This is one of the big stories I wanted to talk about. I talked about Craig Houston being arrested. I don't know if you watched my video or you followed the story. Craig Houston, Scottish YouTuber, is in Glasgow. I've worked with him on a few issues like the freedom of speech rallies we've had. Was there another topic, gender recognition reform, maybe? So in many ways, we're coming from the same perspective. But significant differences as well. I mean, he's got a YouTube channel. Got a lot of people watch it. My opinion would be that it's a sort of a bit sensationalist, conspiracy theory. But people coming back and say, with this really black and white, Craig addresses the issue, and so that's it. There's nothing else to say. He's on the right side, so there can be nothing else to say about that issue. And in particular, when it came to race and Islam, when I didn't say Craig was racist, I said I don't like the way he talks about race sometimes, and I can't see what he's getting at, apart from, but it doesn't seem a good attitude under that. But then people replying saying, you called him racist or whatever. I mean, it's just, it's quite disappointing when people are responding and you hope to have some sort of intelligent exchange, but basically you can't, because people they're driven by loyalties and very black and white thinking about things, and it can be very difficult. Well, for a moment, I'm sure the experience was quite traumatic and shocking in some ways, but now, and he said this, I was just watching a video of him, he was saying this basically, that this is a huge boost for him. This will become an international story. He'll be seen as a free speech martyr. So it's a total own goal for people who think, this will shut up the likes of Craig Houston. Absolutely opposite. He'll be standing for election next year for the SDP. So to have this case running up to the election, this is a dream for Craig Houston.
Honest to fact, like there's so many videos of him like implying, accusing your man of being a sensationalist, a conspiracy theorist, and I find that sort of train of thought, that talking point, that narrative, that belief to be somewhat stupid, especially in the modern era. First and foremost, take a step back, buddy, and acknowledge that the very conversation that you're having, whether that's in your videos or on streams and whatnot, you're talking about a guy that got arrested for making a video about somebody whining about too many white people being in fucking positions of power, right? Why are people getting arrested for stuff like that? That in and of itself is a fucking problem. We live in a white man's world. White privilege is rife. It's everywhere, right? Yet people are getting arrested. People have been fucking jailed for less. Posting stickers on lamppost, jail. Saying naughty things on Twitter, charged, etc. That's first and foremost. That should be the main point of concern, red flag central and whatnot. Right? But above all else, secondly, right, sensationalism. YouTubers rely on sensationalism in the modern era, where you have to walk on eggshells 24/7 because if you say the wrong thing, you get booted off. We don't live in the days anymore where you can say what the fuck you want on YouTube and whatnot, because you run the risk of A, being arrested, or B, getting your channel nuked. So that is just... And then you've got the audacity of, I never actually called them racist. I just don't like the way that you said what you said. All right, mate. Good stuff. Good stuff, bro. Good stuff.
Try and make that happen. So then that's a path that's completely destructive. The question was phrased in terms of race. I think people sometimes see race as a proxy for culture. If you've got people of a different race, then they're probably of a different culture. And I think if people see an increasing number of people from other cultures, that would likely go with a weakened sense of rootedness, a weakened sense of national identity. And I think they're rational concerns, and that's perfectly reasonable to have those. But they're concerns that can be addressed through aiming at integration and assimilation. Give it time and make a conscious effort at it, like, for example, the way the USA does. I think you can forge a united nation out of that. The problem with framing the issue as primarily about race is that, in a sense, is hopeless, because there's no solution to that. Those people are not going to change race. So your only solutions are completely unacceptable, which is why I think bringing in race into politics is potentially dangerous. Whereas if you see them in terms of culture and assimilation, a united society, etc., then that's things you can work on, and you can be optimistic, and you can restrict immigration in the meantime, but you can work on it and you can have a positive vision of the future, which I think is really the only the amount and the nature of it. I think they're the really important questions. It's not about a headline figure. So there's a lot of other relevant factors as well. And Stephen mentioned cultural distance. I think that's a very significant factor, very definitely. What tends to happen with immigration? If you say you've got a little town, the first couple who move there from a new country, then they integrate completely. They've got to learn the language. And people quite like having someone a bit different, brightens the place up, and that's quite good. Everything's perfect. But if then a relative comes over and joins them, so that's still great, but maybe there might be a slightly less integration. And then more people are thinking, right, shall we go over and move to that town? Well, they think, well, yeah, we'd already know people there. There'll already be people who speak our language. And people will start then moving to a country without really the intention of integrating. So if you allow large communities, so isolated communities to grow, immigration into them will accelerate and accelerate, because the cultural barrier seems to be very low. And I think that's what's happened in some areas of England, and I think that creates problems, it creates tensions. And I think if Scotland could avoid those sort of issues in the future, then that would be a wise move.
Scotland could avoid the problems that have occurred down in England. That's what we hope to achieve. Again, of course, he blurs the lines. That's an old video, by the way. But again, blurring the lines between race and ethnicity. It's almost as if these people, despite the fact that sort of commonly accepted that one of the main reasons for why people in general, the sentiment was more in favor of, leaving the European Union in 2016, the general consensus for the favoritism in favor of leaving the EU was, immigration. But it wasn't due to brown and black people, was it? No. It was due to the fact that there was an overwhelming amount of people. That's the way that people have seen it, irrespective of what the statistics, etc., may or may not have shown. People in general were getting fucking pissed off with the amount of people from Europe moving here. Oh, but they're white too. Real white, man. Yeah, Zika, bro. But that seems to get ignored quite often by these people here, And the fucking cop-out of referring to culture all the time is something that I find really laughable. When you really think about it, it's just such a soy boy cop-out. Oh, we can all just embrace the same culture and become one. Kumbaya, habibi. If you were to, exclude for the purpose of this little analogy, every single person who in Scottish or as an immigrant or whatever, if you just focus solely on Scottish people, the vast majority in this day and age of Scottish people have individualistic and materialistic views, religious differences, a lot less religious people overall, Catholic, Protestant, etc. All that shit's kind of dying by the wayside at this point. People in general, even in a Scottish context, don't agree with each other. They might abide by the law more or less, and they might go to work and whatnot, but there isn't this fucking overarching culture that we all buy into, like once upon a time. So trying to justify opening the borders, provided that these people, when they arrive here, embrace this non-fucking existent culture, is on the face of it just fucking stupid. But again, before I finish this video, because I did not expect it to go as long as it has ended up going for, right? Never will you hear these people, because they're too busy conflating ethnicity and race. Never will you hear these people talk about the fact that if the trajectories continue as are, and if trends continue as are, and nothing changes whatsoever, then Scottish people will become a minority in their own country. But it's fine, because people like Richard Lucas and the fucking Guardian and whatnot will have you believe we're all just as Scottish as one another, bro. Yeah, tell that to your fucking grandkids.